to Travel Tuesday Masterclass and a new year, 2026. Although being Chinese, I also observe the Lunar New Year, which this in will be February 17th. And so for me, it feels like there's two New Years. And this one is kind of like the the one leading to the other one. I kind of like that because it doesn't feel like a hard-edged like new year. It feels like a buffer period where it's not automatic like start of the year, go. It's more like, okay, there's a month or so until the Lunar New Year. So a lot of times I find that I operate more in seasons and a bit more of that flow. So there's no real like hard edges in my life, especially when it comes to like calendar dates. Obviously, this is quite antithetical to when you're actually running a business. And that is actually probably what I'd like to discuss more of today on this masterclass. And really, it's just like a casual chat. It's almost for me to just catch up on what's occurring this week and today and what's on my mind. And I like to record it because it's like a not only a diary of sorts, but it's also a way to capture my thoughts and ideas. And to, when you actually speak something out loud, it's a lot different when it's just like in your mind. You ever find like sometimes you have the same thoughts over and over in your mind, but it's not until you actually speak it aloud that first of all, maybe you don't like the words don't even come out the same as it were in your thoughts. And the second thing is that when it was in your thoughts, it made more sense because it's also combined with almost like some imagery and visual, like it's not just necessarily the words. So even just articulating ideas, like that is a very real, like, so for example, like starting a business, as we all know, or if you don't know, I'm building the Serefair Conservatory. And what is the Serefair Conservatory? It's based on Serefair, my alter ego, my game character, my this name that I gave myself so many years ago when I was really almost trying to transcend the ordinary in a way. It's like, I don't really feel like I'm just Sarah and whatever, you have a surname and then you have your government documents and whatnot. It's like, I feel like I don't really resonate with that. And like, I feel more like I'm a Serena fairy castle and it feels more whimsical and playful and, out of the ordinary. And so I started calling myself that in my mind. And it was this energetic resonance more than anything else. This idea of being a little bit more like on the outside of the world, like you're in the world, but you're not of the world. It was like this magical kind of realism. And so Serena Fairy Castle was that name that amalgamated to Serefair, essentially. And it's what led me to go on on a one-way train ride that then evolved into a journey of solo travel. And the one-way train ride really represented this self-led way of being now, one in which it was stemming more from an inner voice, an inner intuition, just like a soul compass more than, say, the extrinsic motivation that maybe more that may influence your actions and behavior. So the distinction really was that when I finally embraced trusting my intuition more and listening to a voice that maybe didn't make a lot of logical sense, that's where I started being like, well, why can't I just be Serena Fairy Castle? So in my mind, I was Serena Fairy Castle. And then a lot of my actions where I'm like, oh, I had this idea, like take this one-way train and go. I was in Vancouver at the time, they go to Toronto. And I was like, why would I do that? It makes no sense. And but I listened to that just because I knew that I didn't follow that voice when I was 17 when it told me go travel. Instead, I went to university, and that never really felt right for me. That was more like the external motivation, like acting for extrinsic purposes, right? Rather than that self-led agency, that intuitive voice. Why did this video just zoom in? Like, how did it zoom out? How do you zoom out in this? Anyway, so today I just had like, I was just tidying up a bit and getting things in order. And I was just like, you ever feel like when you just want to like, it's just like this sprint of, sometimes maybe you have little things like piling up and then you just take a day to kind of put everything like aside and like tidy up a little bit. It's that energy of allowing something new in. And especially, moving into this season of building a business, I not only doing like the videos for YouTube, but also creating specific trainings and videos that encompasses a lot of some specific wisdom, teachings, ideas, and lessons. No, I don't like the word lessons. Like specific aspects of my journey that led to me becoming Serena Fairy Castle and becoming more self-led, because that's really where what has made all the difference in my own journey in my own life. And I've always thought if I just started that journey earlier when I was 17 and allowed myself to listen to my own soul, I would have lived a decade of that time in my early 20s instead of going down a route that was not really aligned with me. I would have, I mean, many things, but I feel like I've always had a feeling like, you want to create something. And I had always been drawn to YouTube. And it was interesting because YouTube actually came out around 2007, which was like just a couple years after I entered university. So I'd always been like, yeah, what if I just, especially sometimes you get these messages from your inner voice, and it's not for not, like, it's not for any, no reason. Like a lot of times it's just when your human mind might not necessarily understand, might not be able to see the bigger picture. But not only that, sometimes your logical mind is more boxed in. Like it's not necessarily so expanded in thinking where it's like, yeah, you could do that. It's more like, no, maybe you can't do that, or yeah, that's not really for you, right? So there's a lot of those limiting beliefs, or like those think like condition, like thinking that maybe you might not even necessarily be cognizant of, aware of, but they might just be operating from like a default setting. And this is why it's so important to get out of that box of your own mind and allow it. It just did that thing again where it just zoomed. I don't know if that's automatic or what. Anyway. Yeah. So what was I just saying? Yeah. So this is why your intuition is often the voice that is from a perspective larger than your human mind. And they may actually know something that you don't necessarily know. And I always felt like I never felt called to go to any one particular location. That was another thing. I remember just thinking when I was like imagining myself in an occupation, right? I was like, where would I actually see myself working? What role do I actually see myself doing? Where, like, what am I actually doing? And like, no matter what job description it was, for some reason, I just could not really see myself kind of doing this thing that felt very linear, if that makes sense. Nor could I see myself even necessarily going to like a particular place of employment, like day in, day out. I always felt like that didn't feel quite right. Not only that, but just the fact that like I never really felt like, yeah, it's just like no particular occupation, as it were, really felt like it called to me, or that I was like, yeah, this is the route I want, or anything. And quite frankly, I'd never actually, in a way, had that external pull by, like, say, you know, like sometimes people go to university and they're like, I'm going to get this job so that I can make this salary or this and whatnot. So I chose environmental conservation sciences. And my other option was like, or not option, but the only other faculty that I could see myself in was liberal arts. And so these aren't necessarily the typical careers that you would think of if you're like, it's not like doctor, lawyer, engineer, or something like of that nature, where if you're really like, I don't know, if you just have a more of a calling or something, or if you really felt very certain about what path you wanted to pursue. So I was always just more like process of elimination. I'm like, well, if I'm going to go to do this thing, which faculty? I'm just like, I don't want to be in this one, not this one, this one. And I picked I picked the faculty of agricultural forestry and home economics. I mean, part of that is just because, yeah, I do value the environment, of course. And I don't know, I just felt like that was the only thing. I feel like I've always been very heart led, which is why I heard that voice at 17 tell me go travel. I just didn't necessarily listen to it, or I didn't quite know what to do with it, right? So, long story short, is that I was not necessarily happy per se. And even after I graduated university, I was still living in this way that was not fully being in the driver's seat. And that's the thing. It's like, yeah, of course, there are moments of joy, like when I'm like, 5 years is a very long time to be in university. But not only that, like, obviously, it's not just university. Like, there's many things that I enjoy. Like, I always love playing board games and other things. And it's like, life was not bad or anything. Like, obviously, there's many things that I enjoy. It felt like, it felt like this big thing that was just kind of in the way though, because I was like, every time I went to university, that was like one thing that just felt like this is not aligned. And yet most other things like is going well. Like I enjoy, like I like, you know, life is like I like, we have raspberries in the garden, like in the home that I grew up in. And, it was always like bunnies outside from the can always see from the window, and like the big evergreen trees. So it's like there are many things that I just love. And not only that, like some of the subject matter I also love, but a lot of it also was just the fact that it's like, okay, so I've never experienced, say, like, maybe there are some things that people go through where they have to like, whether someone goes through like a marriage or a relationship or like a divorce or some other type of situation where finally they realize like I was not really being my true self. For me, that was like university. That was essentially university. I was like, I was like in this thing that I felt like was not necessarily my own decision. And of course I have free will. Like, of course if I really, really, really was like certain or not like going to make a decision, I would not have just continued on there. But there it was, right? So there's this major question in my head. I'm like, why do I feel like I'm not just living my own life? And what is it? It's like feeling like there's this kind of like a veil. And so that's like a very major thing because when you're not necessarily just being soul led, that impacts every part of your life. That's not just one thing. That's the reason why they always say if you're not in a good relationship or like, maybe you got into some kind of a marriage or something, that will impact every other area of your life. This for me was like the career thing or like going to university and going down that route, right? So it was not until I was like in my 20s that even after graduating, I was still on this path of like trying to fit into occupation. It's like, yeah, why? It's like, it was like this thing of your mind almost keeping you in this box when your intuition can already see beyond that. So I was mentioning like YouTube in 2007, right? Because this is like, I was always on those, like there's this, what's that? Oh yeah, there's this like board called IMDb, and there were like all these other online spaces. So like obviously the computer was more like prevalent, at least like, yeah, we like actually at home we still had like one of those box computers. So it wasn't even like a laptop per se. And even when I was a kid, we had like the dial-up modem ones. And like I would always be like creating stuff on there. And obviously I would be like writing on different forums and everything. So it's like that digital age that was already coming into fruition. And I think I just felt like a pull. It's not even like a pull, it was just like this feeling like university is not necessarily the path. And I could feel that very, very strongly, but I didn't necessarily know why. And this is where that leaning more on intuition will show you the way more than say like the analysis or the logic. Because I always think back, I'm like, well, what if I just listened to my heart? As cliche that as that sounds, just listen to my heart and it told me like go travel. And then if I just decided, you know what, I'm not going to go to university, I'm just going to give myself the space and the time to let life unfold, see what I'm drawn to, right? Allow my intuition to lead me, that self-led agency, which I feel like, yeah, sure, there's probably like many people who actually do that already. And then there are also facets, parts of, people who also maybe whatever way it is and whatever path do not necessarily have that self-led agency where they're truly just choosing for themselves, like without, having all of these external factors feeling like it's influencing your decisions. So long story short, I was not necessarily, I don't even know if happy is the word. It's more just I was not necessarily feeling, it wasn't even feeling, it was not a sense of ease. And this is where I really want to distinguish what ease means, because ease does not necessarily mean easy, right? Ease is a sense of soul-led alignment. It means that you're not forcing something. It means that you're not in a struggling kind of energy, which is really what was happening when I was not listening to my own body and my own feelings and the inner call that was happening. So somewhere in my 20s, I finally just like had this sense of acceptance of like surrender. I'm like, oh, whatever. Gosh, I'm gonna like stop trying so hard. Why am I like, I don't really care about trying to figure it all out. I don't even know. Like I've already tried various occupations and, considered maybe going for more education. Who knows? Like just all sorts of thinking and trying to figure it out and like doing and like just really still feeling like I was just in the same place. And I was like, well, what was all that for, right? So then I eventually just got to this place where I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna, okay, so whatever I was doing at the time and like just living my life and going about the day to day, I was like, you know what? It doesn't even matter anymore. Like, I'm just going to stop trying to figure it out and just start, and then at that point, I started like adding things that like were new. So I think at one point I joined like a Toastmasters and then I went to like, I was led to like a Vipassana. And I mean, you may have already heard my story that like right after university, I joined a psychotherapy group. So like I just kind of like put myself in these different environments and these different experiences. And I started like exploring healing modalities and like different alternative therapies and such and holistic kind of wellness. So things like that I was very just drawn to intrinsically, actually. And it's a lot of times when you're just in that state of surrender or acceptance where you just like allow yourself to breathe a little bit and you have a more spaciousness and you're not so like directly trying to do the thing that is like giving you some frustration where it's like, I got to figure out my occupation. I got to sort out what my career path is. I got to figure out what, if I'm going to go back to education and do like this instead and blah, blah, blah. And it's really often in the times, when you stop trying or like, what's that word? When you stop pushing so hard, it's like you just detach from the outcomes per se, that a lot of times the answers come in. That really it has to do with the energetic component where you've like released the sense of struggle and you're just like, it's like when you're holding onto like a rope so tightly and it's like twisted, but if you just let go, it kind of unravels itself on of its own accord, right? So it's this idea that if you ever feel like you're in a bit of a twist where you're really just trying to, you know, bang your head on a wall against a wall and like really just almost efforting too much towards something like the sense of dis-ease. This is where the dis-ease is. Like you're not just in a state of like allowing essentially. So I essentially just like from sheer exhaustion, really, probably, or even just like sheer, like, you know what? I don't even know. I'm just like almost like this resigning from like, you know what? I don't even know. And this was probably like 23, 24-ish. I started just being like, And I just started like, I would always be like reading fiction books and watching like cartoons and playing games, like whether it was like video games or board games or computer games. So I was always still like a big kid at heart. Like a lot of my like activities were always felt more like childlike than anything else. And and at some point, like just through this process of surrender and even just allowing myself to just do the things I naturally loved anyway. So I would be like, well, let me just go work at a game store because, a fun job. So I would do that. Like, I think I do that like once a week, just like on the weekend, just like a supplemental job. And I was like, well, this is fun. Like, also, it was like a store I'd gone to since I was like a kid kind of thing. So it felt like I was just kind of there and, um, not necessarily like, oh, I'm doing this as a job. It's like more like intrinsically led. Like, oh, you know what? I've always kind of wanted to work there actually. I love games and it's like one of my favorite stores, at least in my hometown. And then another thing was like, what did I do? I was like, yeah, drawn to like more of like different, like I explored different areas in my hometown and I started becoming much more interested in like holistic wellness. So things like I was drawn to like flower essences and even like Reiki and say like um acupuncture and yeah, I just tried all sorts of different like and like there's this one time I took like a crow and I was like natural eye care or something. It was like this almost like you can naturally improve your eyesight or something through like these natural therapies and exercises. And there was also like obviously like the yoga and such. So I was just drawn to like these particular places in the city that were more about this type of a vibe, right? This type of a energy. And that's not really, I've never really been a very, what do you call it? Like I've never really done stuff like that. Like I don't really do meditation or yoga or things of that nature, like in my own home. Like I played piano per se, but I never really was like practicing any wellness techniques of that sort. And when I just started allowing it, also I started using more products that were like kinder for your skin and nicer for your body because they had gentler ingredients, right? And they weren't so harsh or they were made with more care and consciousness. So I naturally started just gravitating just by way of, it's like the sorting hat in Harry Potter. Your nature just kind of chooses almost like it who you are intrinsically. It's kind of just like you become a match for who you already are. So it's like when I wasn't really trying to be anyone or to try to do anything, I just almost like naturally flowed to different places. Like I started going to the library a lot more. That was just somewhere like I would love to go, like say after like work or something. I'm just like, I don't really feel like going home. I just gonna sit in the library or go and like read different books here or explore different areas or different parts of the city and whatnot. And also part of that led me to like the different wellness therapies and such. And so it was through this acceptance and surrender that then I was like also like, you know what, maybe I'm also seeking more like even deeper silence, something like that. And that's actually what led me to Vipassana. I've talked about Vipassana quite a lot, so I'm not going to go too much into that right now. So the main point here is just that when you're not necessarily trying to do something, like not having this particular like, oh, I gotta go do this, and you just almost like allow who you naturally are already to just emerge naturally without forcing it. It's that Wu Wei principle. It's the Tao Te Ching. It's the like Taoist teachings, the principles of like this ancient wisdom, like do nothing, accomplish everything. It's like when I stop trying to do something, when I stop trying so hard in essence. This is what led me to more joy. And I started also allowing myself to feel good, right? So, in contrast to say that feeling of like that, a little bit of that dissonance and that feeling like this inner conflict when I was in university, not because, and this is where that distinction between ease and easy is, because ease is a feeling of like you're simply flowing with your soul, like your soul is in charge and it's leading you and you're being pulled rather than you almost having to effort and force and like push. And that's how I distinguish ease from efforting. It's not really about whether something's easy or not, like, in terms of the doing of it. It's more in relation to how your soul is feeling in relation. Like, is it feeling like you're having to effort something, like force something, make something happen, right? Or are you simply allowing, accepting, surrendering that ease? And this is what I'm saying, right? In all those years that I was like trying to, from my logical human mind, figure it out, or like almost like control, because it really is like this sense of control. Like I, the human, can almost like, it's this false sense of like illusion of security when you're trying to like handle all of that, right? Rather than allowing the inner, like the infinite intelligence to simply sort it all out for you and arrange it all in essence. Is like all you really do is just simply be and show up and just live essentially. It really gets to be that easy. And so I allowed myself to start just choosing joy intentionally, like even like the clothing I started wearing. Because, in prior to that, especially, like I would always be like rearranging my furniture, especially my bedroom furniture, always try to like change something like externally, or even like I would buy so many clothing and felt like nothing really fit me, or like I couldn't really like get a good sense of like what I liked or didn't even like when I just bought lots of clothing. I was like almost like this disconnect between who I really like, what I really felt. And it was like my mind was almost like been making these decisions like, oh, that looks nice. But then when I took it home and I was like, I would never wear it. How many of us have this problem where you buy so many things, you don't actually use it? It's like this disconnect between what your mind is thinking and what you actually are. So I was like in this cycle of like always buying so many clothes, too many clothes that I would actually never wear. And then it just caused my room to be really messy. Then I was always like rearranging my furniture or even buying like new different things here and there to almost like affect some kind of a change. But none of it would feel quite right. I was like, but really, it wasn't even about the outer. It was like what was going on inside of me. It's like I didn't really know who I was. I didn't really have a strong sense of my own values, the things that actually lit me up in that way, that was true to who I am. And like those inner values. And also that's where the soul, when you develop that quality, the self-led agency, that's where soul gets to lead, and your mind doesn't have to do all the heavy lifting, right? You don't have to think so much. You don't have to like try to figure it out. When I buy clothing, I'm not efforting in the sense of like, oh, I really have to think if I like this or not, or I think I'm gonna like this. It doesn't become this big analysis, or like, you know like a what are those like puzzles to solve. And yeah, so over time it's like because I became much more clear on what actually felt good, and like because I just kind of like surrendered a little bit more, and I just allowed myself to breathe and be like, I'm kind of curious about this. Maybe I'll go find out about this. And so, as I was mentioning, like I became really more interested in like the holistic wellness and such, and it led me to like the places that I didn't I didn't before go to before. I didn't go to prior. And then I started buying like products that I felt suited me more and that I actually gravitated to more naturally. So I stopped shopping at like even big box stores, right? Even like the drug marts and such. And I went to more like handmade, like artisan craft stores that had more like local or homemade type of products, or products that were more conscious in design. And also the clothing, I would buy fewer clothing and more that actually I liked wearing or that felt good, right? It wasn't just about how it looked when I was looking at it, but also when I actually wore it, I'm like, I feel good in this. So that's why I also stopped buying so many clothing that I just would not wear it all the time. And so little by little, like all these changes really occurred in the physical world through me changing how I was operating in the internal world, and the way that I was able to understand my own values, and really actually even be able to feel more of what I actually felt. Yeah, because there was a time I felt like there was a certain disconnect. There was like an emptiness and like a hollowness there that was causing me to like try to like rearrange the external world, whether it was like the furniture or like just placement of different things, and not even for feng shui purposes. Okay, this was not it. Those was me just like wanting to like change something, but I was like focusing more on the external pieces than like changing something within me that would then allow me to make the changes externally that would actually have more efficacy, if that makes sense, would be more effective when it start first came from within, rather than me trying to be like, I'm going to move this around these things on the outside, but still coming from a very like a space of like trying to affect change without actually coming from within first. And so when it came from within, it's like, and I not just move things around, like, it's like the busy work. I started choosing differently because I was connecting with who I am differently. I started realizing which products actually feel good, which products actually make me feel rich and lush and abundant. And so it was like these specific qualities that led to like a certain wealth upgrade, right? It was like, I stopped letting even just like, sometimes the things that how you make decisions are determined by these metrics that you are not, maybe you're not even aware of. So like, for example, choosing to like going to university, is it a pure intrinsic motivation, or is it because of is there like an external motivation that is influencing them? Likewise, when you buy products, when you buy like clothing or whatever, any other product that you use, is it being influenced by some kind of external motivation? Like, this is the cheaper product, or this is the more convenient one, or this is just the one that you don't even think about when you just get, right? And as I developed my own sense of self-agency, where I started just, it really came with that surrender. I was like, oh, you know what? I don't even care right now. That's where the soul is able to come through more clearly. Because suddenly my mind is not necessarily overactive. It's not creating all the noise and the distractions and like taking over and like being louder than my own soul. So in that inner stillness and like a bit more of that silence, I'm really able to, it was really just that surrender that suddenly like my soul would just kind of prompt me and like guide me more and like going here and there. And at that point, like I was just kind of like, I wouldn't say resigned, but I was like, oh, whatever. There's no point like trying to, at that time I had like cycled through like various jobs and like occupations. I was like, I don't even know anymore. And I was like, you know what? I'm not even gonna try to figure out anything right now. I'm just gonna, enjoy, just let it be for now, and just like, there's nothing to fix or to do or to try to rearrange right now. It was really just energy of like pause, of like not almost like churning all of this effort towards like a different outcome, if as it were. And that's where this sense of, well, why don't I just go do this then? Why don't I just try this? And then I gradually, because now my soul was choosing, it led me to certain things that I was not necessarily aware of before, like just operating from my mind, things that maybe I wouldn't necessarily have chosen from my logical mind. I was like, for example, choosing products that maybe would cost more than I was used to, and even maybe in different types of stores than I was used to. And also, even maybe just like not even having that decision making be based on like, oh, well, this is different than what I've often used, or even this is something that like almost like maybe you would talk yourself out of it, like, oh, well, why would I get this if I can just get this or something? And it was like these things where I realized like my decision now was less, because especially with the university experience, because that decision was heavily based on like, well, if I do this, then this, right? Like this is what you do, because then you get a degree, and then you obviously can have it's just like different factors of like, oh, employers appreciate you having a degree, and it shows that you can do this and this and this, and also, you know certain occupations require you to have a degree. So there's like all these different external things. And so so at the time, this was not a very pure decision, right? It was very influenced, contaminated by various factors that were not necessarily stemming from soul. But the what the piece of soul was that quiet whisper at 17 when I was at orientation day, it told me go travel. And that felt like the most honest thing coming from within me. Yet at the time, I was obviously paying more attention to all the noise in my head, telling me all these different things, like my human mind coming up with all these different things about. And this is why I was saying, like, you got to transcend the logical mind if you want to get to a state of more pure consciousness. Sometimes if you really want to connect with your intuition, and your soul oftentimes requires suspending whatever's going on in your logical mind, your logical human mind. So at this time, it was like my 20s and even like mid 20s. At this time, I really kind of became more in that groove of like just listening to my soul. So even like when I would buy board games that I always had done, I was like, you know what? I started being like, these are the games I really, really like. And they were things like Big Sit and Mystery of the Abbey, and like these board games that were more than just like board games. They were like very nicely like designed and like really like good quality and such. And they often had like more complex or like storyline type of games. And as mentioned, I also started buying clothes that I felt like less clothes, but more clothes that I actually truly, truly like. In my mind, I was like, oh, that feels a little bit like something outside of what I normally wear or that I would normally get. Like when I was just looking at something from my logical mind, I was like, oh, I like that. But sometimes soul would choose something else. And I started leaning into soul to make the decision. I was like, oh, okay, my mind is thinking that's not quite it. But for some reason, my soul feels at peace with it. It feels like there's just like a resonance there. And whenever I made decisions from that place, I always found like those clothing, for some reason, I would probably grow into it, but it would be like maybe at first, in my mind, I was like, yeah, I don't know. I don't feel like I would actually wear that. But then I just like I would actually wear it like every day at some point, and it was kind of like one of my pieces, like my favorite pieces of clothing. Whereas the decisions I would make with my mind, that I'm like, oh, that looks like, in my head, I'm like, that looks good. I want that piece of clothing, but it wouldn't actually suit me per se specifically. And I was not making the decision from like a feeling place or the place from soul that actually can see the bigger picture and can actually see more than just from your mind. And this isn't just about like stuff per se. This is like anything. But really, the core principle behind it is that I stopped making decisions from human logic, from all of the conditioning and even like the limiting mindsets that keep you in a certain way of being that may not actually be the most conducive to your highest self and like the evolution of who you are. And so when I became more in this, started living in a more self-led, soul-led fashion, I found like there was less need to try to affect change on the external world, because now my internal world was already leading in a way that my external world felt good. So the clothes that I was wearing, the products that I was using, the decisions like that reflected my values now. And it also, it led to like also this identity upgrade, because it just naturally meant that I chose products that were maybe better quality, or they were made like a more fair trade, or they were just kind of for the environment in some fashion. They felt better too, and they overall gave me more of a sense of peace and calm. And when I started choosing from this way, that intrinsic led way, like from soul, and not necessarily from the specific outcome of like, oh, well, like your mind making the decision based on its own logic or conditions or rules, or even like external um, impositions and such. That's where it felt like not only was I living more aligned with my actual values, I was also, in a way, it was literally just choosing joy more intentionally. Whether I was conscious of that at first, it eventually became more conscious to me that like, I'm actually allowing my soul to choose. And in allowing my soul to choose, I'm actually choosing what feels more like joy right now. And so that actually became more conscious to me at some point. And I remember thinking, I'm not trying as hard right now. I'm simply doing the thing that feels good. And if you've ever read like Marie Kondo's like Choose Joy, I actually never got to reading that book until like 2017. Maybe it didn't even come out until 2017. That was already after my 17 months of solo travel. So at that point, like I kind of already understood that concept just by way of it. That sometimes occurs. So I find like I never actually read the book until I've already gotten the lesson in real time, in real life, just by way of my experiences. And then suddenly the book appears that kind of like encapsulates what I just lived or experienced. I'm like, well, because I also feel like sometimes I wouldn't necessarily have taken in the message, if that makes sense. Sometimes like if something, if you read a book, Choose Joy, but you don't even know what that means. Like even if it's telling you directly, like there's something in your subconscious way of being, or just, something that you're just not necessarily just going to change, because it's not just like someone telling you do this or do that, or you reading a book on it with someone who has the experience and the answers or whatever. It has more to do with you learning that for yourself. And then maybe at some point you find the book and it's just reflecting to you what you already know. Do you ever find that irony where it's like a lot of times the things that you learn is like in some way you already know, and that's the only reason you're actually matching to that thing now? And like, there's nothing that you actually necessarily learn that your soul is not already like teaching itself in some way. So that's kind of like the irony a lot of times of like trying to learn or like be mentored or like find answers in something outside of yourselves, when actually the answers are all already inside of you. You need only listen to it, and then that will bring you to the next truth. And a lot of times then it's reflected in your outer world. You find the book, you find the message, you find the person who is like teaching you that same message, and you're like, well, I know that now. Like, and that's where you truly almost like let it sink in, and now you integrate it because you're ready to receive that teaching, right? What's that saying? When the student is ready, the teacher appears. That's very much the thing. Okay, so the Marie Kondo book, Choose Joy, it was like in 2017 that I came across this book, or maybe it was just the year that it came out. Don't recall, but so that's the irony. At this point, I've been choosing joy intentionally, and it led me to like I went to like this was already after graduating from university and like going through a few years of like just various occupation and just feeling like I was just, and then I came to this point of surrender, and I'm like, you know what, I'm done with this. I'm just gonna stop whatever I'm doing right now and just live life essentially. And that's what led me to like just listening to myself a little bit more. And so at some point I'm like, you know what would I feel like I'm drawn to life coaching. So I enrolled myself in a private college, which is actually like a private college is obviously a bit more of a higher expense, right? But for some reason, I think it was like, how much was it? 25,000 for like a 6 month certificate or something, like one of those schools. Where as like, university, usually it's like, yeah, it's just usually not that as like 25,000 for like, especially if you're not going to like especially if you're just going like to a more public like university or something. Usually it's more like the tuition's around like 5,000 or so per semester. So this was almost like a stretch. I'm like, yeah, but I'm choosing what feels good. And to me, I don't want to go to university again. I want to go to like a big public university. I want to go to something, yeah, this private college that teaches life coaching. It's very niche. It's very like, and it's always like in downtown Vancouver. And also I chose to live in downtown Vancouver. Whereas maybe as I had lived there in my 20s when I was still like in different occupation, and I had like lived a little bit more on the edge of Vancouver, so still in the heart, like in the city of Vancouver, but like a little bit not like in the downtown core. Right? When you like, which is like the downtown core tends to have a little bit more of higher living expenses and accommodation, just because it's like where all the pretty places are essentially. That's where you're close to the ocean, the mountains and whatnot. So I was like, well, you know what, I'm choosing joy. And it's like, whether not like consciously choosing that, but it was like I was so in this habit now and like way of being that I'm like, I'm not choosing anything that feels in discord with my soul or makes me feel like I'm not at peace or at rest, and like more choosing from soul. So now I'm making the decisions that are not so based on like money, right? Because how often do people actually use money as a constraint? You know, almost like this idea, it's like this irony of the sun, like people are like, oh, um, being like, oh, how do you tease this around? It's like, the science is this odd way that people justify like money is not the most important thing in the world, or there's um or you got to value appreciate the value of a dollar and whatnot, or like all these different sayings, right? But when it comes to actual practice, so it's like, oh, what was I trying to go with this? Okay, so okay, stay with me here. I have something to say. There is, okay, so for example, when I'm like, I'm going to choose this because this is what my soul aligns with, this is truly where you're like, you appreciate the value of something, meaning your soul-led decision. Like you appreciate your time, your life force energy, like your just well-being. Like I mentioned, I was like a lot more focused on well-being and holistic wealth and health and all these things now. And also that idea that like, yeah, if money is not like the most important thing, or like money doesn't buy happiness, so, all these different sayings that a lot of times people have. And it's like, yeah, so it's like, but in many ways money is like the deciding factor. Like people make decisions from the logical human mind based on like that revolves around money. So it's like, even though people say, oh, money is not, you know love is more important than money, and joy is more important than money, and yet they're not actually practicing that in the physical. Because what that really would look like is like, say when I chose to go to the life coaching college, that was a higher price point and even would not necessarily feel like something I would have otherwise chosen. It was like, this is what it truly meant to be like, yeah, love is more important than money. Joy is more important than money, because I was now valuing myself more than money, if that makes sense. I was choosing the thing that my heart really desired and my soul really felt pulled to. And it was this life coaching program in the heart of downtown Vancouver that I also chose to live in. That was also a higher price point than just simply living maybe more on the periphery of the center, very central place, right? And so in these choosing from a place of like, I'm not allowing money to be the determining factor, this is really where you transcend that idea. And you're like, in fact, yes, I practice what I preach in that way. Like, yes, love is more important than money. Although I've never said any of these phrases to myself. I've never been like this, but you realize that like, how many things like do you do in life because you think money, like if money is a factor in some way. So going to university, is that not have a, well, even the fact that I went to university because I had a fund saved for me from my parents, right? That was actually an external influence. Well, we have money saved for you. So yeah, you would go, right? And then also the idea like you go to university so that you can make money. Like money is the basis of decision for a lot of decisions that might not necessarily be from pure consciousness. So that's the irony of right? Or even like when you buy certain things, you're like, well, this is cheaper than this thing. You're not actually choosing love over money when you buy the cheaper thing. You're letting money dictate your choices. Do you see like the irony in here? And also, do you see like a little bit of that nonsensicalness? Like it doesn't actually make even logical sense. So you're not necessarily even allowing soul to guide you, yet you're using the excuse that we're saving money. Like I'm choosing the cheaper thing because I value money. But if you truly valued money, you would be choosing the joy. You would be allowing your soul to choose, because this is where money is not a deciding factor. But when money becomes like the deciding factor, then you don't necessarily truly value money, nor do you truly value time or energy or your life. So yeah, as I was saying, like I started choosing products and making decisions. And, there's like this journal or this journal, this shirt or that shirt, this lotion or that lotion. It's like I would choose the one that felt good, regardless of the external, right? Regardless of the price, regardless of the actual like logical mind coming in. I'd be like, this is the one that feels good. This is the one that feels better. This is the one that I actually like. that choose joy, the Marie Kondo thing, right? It's like you don't let your logical mind get in the way and lead you astray. You're just like letting your soul lead you for whatever reason, for whatever illogical reason. Like, I don't know. I just like this one, okay? End of story. I just like it. This is truly choosing with love, with joy, choosing from that pure consciousness state of being. So I say this all because it was really through these micro shifts and changes that it led me to this time in like 2015, where I'm now living in the heart of downtown Vancouver. And I'm enrolled in this life coaching program at a higher price point at a private college than I would never necessarily consider. And I didn't consult my parents or anything. Like I didn't really, I just made all these decisions on my own and I didn't really question the why. I didn't even really think about like the um because to me the most important thing at this point was like feeling good, because I had not felt good for so long, despite having like all the clothing around me and all the stuff around me. I didn't feel good because I was not choosing from a place of good. I was choosing from with all these different constraints. I was choosing from this place of like all these different external factors really deciding for me rather than true alignment with my real values, that soul led pure consciousness decision making, right? So although I was like moving things around in the external, or like felt like I had so much stuff around me, yet all of it felt so empty, more clothes than I actually wore. These were all signs of misalignment, that I was not making decisions from a core true sense of self. They were all coming from like misaligned place of like thinking and lodge and like forcing and like from the mind that was not necessarily aligned. And that's where I mentioned like the decision to go to university at 17 and continue that path for the 5 years and graduate and then try to fit into occupation that never felt right. All of those were signs of misalignment because they were all coming from a logical mind and not truly chosen from the soul. And because it wasn't chosen from the soul, none of it felt right. And I was always trying to affect change on the external without truly connecting with the internal. And that's where that disconnect came in. And so over time, through that final like just surrender and acceptance, and finally just moving more into state of allowing and choosing joy more from just sheer tiredness at that point, really just like, what, I've had enough of trying to figure it all out. I've tried to almost like feels like I'm just banging my head against the wall, like I'm just doing the same thing over and over and nothing's changing. It's just the same patterns reoccurring. So it was just like this idea of like, what, I need to just stop fighting it all. And it was like that rope, right? The twisted rope, and you just let go and it just unravels itself, right? Sometimes you just have to let go. You just got to stop interfering. Let go, let God, get out of your own way. Wu wei being like do nothing, accomplish everything. Sometimes when you just do nothing, sometimes that's actually better than trying to do something. It's like that idea that all of nature blossoms and blooms of its own accord and time. There's nothing that necessarily needs to be efforted or done per se. It's just all a natural cycle and process of life, and it's just allowing yourself to return to that natural way of being without having to over effort from this like state of mind that just like overworking itself in many ways, just like chill chill essentially. And that's so ironic. I actually have a document that I typed up in like January 2016 that I really started in like 2015, that was like, I titled it Chillax. And I had like all these like new wisdom principles for my life where I was like chillax, because I was now living in this place of like this state of being that was more about being chillax, right? Like, gosh, you just need to calm down. Like, not even calm down. It was more just like this total shift in energy, like an energetic way of being and like an energetic state. And I actually had the doc, like, what? I probably like this document is like has like so much gold and wisdom in it. Cause it was like literally the brink in which I went on that one-way train ride, because I was now essentially a different person. I stopped efforting so much. And literally that document was just like I think I had like all of my learnings. I was like, what? It's all about just chillaxing, not over efforting, not trying to make anything happen, not like controlling things with my mind or what I think I'm making happen. It's like, that's the thing. Sometimes as a human, you think you have more like influence than you really do, if that makes sense. Like there's sometimes like when you lead from your soul, a lot of times you find there's less to do and yet it's more effective, if that makes sense. And okay, so now it's like 2015. I'm living in the heart of downtown Vancouver and I'm going to this private college. And I'm also wearing clothes that I actually like now. I'm using products and I'm like in a more joyous state of being. You know, I was saying that, you know, during the university years, I was always in this state of like feeling like something just was not quite like working. Like it's just something that it didn't feel quite like I was settled or at rest or like peaceful per se. So I was not necessarily happy. And then it was like I surrendered at some point in my 20s and I just stopped trying to figure things all out, at least not with the same way of frame of mind that I had been previously operating. And so this led me to now like these micro changes over time that I find like I'm wearing all these clothes that I really feel more like that I love wearing, right? It's a joy to wear. And then I'm also living in a place that I enjoy, like I'm in the heart of downtown. It's like giving me more energy and inspiration and like that feeling of aliveness and gratitude and appreciation. Meanwhile, I'm also going to this private college, the one that I chose, the one that I soul chose, not just like influenced by like, oh, this is the cheaper option, or not even cheaper option, but also like this is the more practical option. You know, to me, that felt like a very impractical thing. And like life coaching, what the heck is that? But it was a more soul-led calling. I was like, this is what I just like it. I'm just drawn to it. I also like the more cozy, like intimate setting rather than like the more in-depth subject, like the very niche subject. And also kind of like has more of an like the roadmap would be more like you can make it your own more than say like if you went like university route is a more traditional occupation. And also obviously the campus is just a lot bigger and it's just more like shuffling between classrooms and such, and it's just like a totally different vibe, right? So whatever, I wasn't analyzing to that extent, but it was more just like, yeah, this is what I choose, like I just like this. And this was already like in my mid-20s, right? So it's like this reclamation. I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to do the things that I actually like, the things I never did, right? The things I never really chose of my own accord that now I'm just going to start doing. So I'm shopping more at places that I like. I'm living in a place that I really like. I'm also enrolled in like this education, like in this, I don't even call it like education. It just felt like more like not even self-development, but it just felt like life coaching program, like I don't know. It just felt like something like I just was really drawn to. Like it was this more pure intrinsic reason. I didn't really have a means to an end. It wasn't really like, oh, I'm going to get this at the end of it. It was more like, I just would really like the experience of going through this program because I like these are the topics that I'm interested in naturally. And I like the location. And I just like, I can, you know, I can enjoy the journey more because I'm like living nearby. It's just like a few blocks. I can just walk there and it's a joy to do that. And it's like, I'm living in the city that I uh, resonate with. And I'm also, you know, like the mountains are just like a stone's throw away and like the ocean is right there. And I'm like living in this high rise in downtown Vancouver. And I'm like, you know, going to this life coaching program and I'm wearing like these cardigans and dresses that I like. And I'm like these boots. And I'm like, I don't know, I'm just kind of like enjoying life, right? Just living, just enjoying life, just enjoy being a human being and not necessarily for a means to an end or like overthinking things or choosing things for reasons other than the thing itself, right? So I'm more just like living directly from soul rather than almost like all the interference from the mind. And it's like this process of surrender. And I would say that this is really what allowed that frequency, as I was saying with like the book thing, where sometimes you don't come across a teaching or a book or the thing until you actually are in resonance with it or you're ready to receive the teaching. So it was while I'm like a month into this program that I get this call, go to Toronto. I'm like, and it recurs like a few times. I'm just sitting in this, you know, it's college and I'm like, I have no reason to be like, why would I go to Toronto? I'm in the middle of this life coaching program. And I just mentioned that I like where I'm living and I'm in Vancouver and I like this, I have no reason to go. So it's this very out of the blue idea. Makes no sense. There's no reason. It's no means to an end, right? But it keeps recurring. And for some reason, there's something within me that I'm like, I kind of want to go. I kind of want to go. And it was like this, just like this sheer feeling of like, there's no reason. I have no logical reason. And my mind kept almost like trying to get in the way and like interfere and be like, but why would you go? What the hell are you doing? Like all these different things. And I was like, I don't know. But why would I not go? Right. And then I even had like a talk with like the counselor of that college and just kind of presenting. I'm like, well, I kind of feel like I want to go. And they did like this tarot card reading. They were like, well, I don't know. I feel like you could just finish the course. Like, why would you have to go? And so it was like more like this logical thing. And I was like, I don't know. I kind of just want to go. And I feel like a sense of joy and curiosity and like play and adventure and wonder, right? And it was just this way that I had started living at this point where I'm like, well, I'd done all the things from my logical mind, or what I thought was from my logical mind. And that really didn't really get me anywhere other than this feeling of like, well, now I have to surrender. And that's really where I felt like I became more of myself in my 20s through almost like it came across almost like this, it came across even more childlike because I was like, well, I'm just going for the sense of, I'm just choosing from joy, not any logical, like sophisticated adult reasoning. I'm like, I just feel like it. So it felt like very childlike. And I was like now 27, right? And I was like, well, I started realizing, well, what's this illusion that like this leads to that? Is all these conditionings and the patterns of the mind, where the mind is almost like making all these rules and conditions about this, then that, right? I was like, well, no, I just want to go. So it's this very simple decision making framework now. And that's actually what led me, even though it still felt scary at the time, because it was still like going into the unknown. I was still like, most of all, have to now say no to the place I was living, no to the, jobs that I was at, and no to this coaching program that I was in, and just no to like whatever I was currently doing. So it's like this clear decision. And so I allowed myself to go with that joy because this was now who I was. And this was now what I was able to receive. It was through this journey of allowing myself to choose more from this intrinsic place that led to that journey actually unfolding and me actually being able to say yes to it because of how I was now making decisions and the soul-led, self-led agency from which I was moving. So that is just a story of Serefair and how Serefair really came to be and the journey of going from, maybe overthinking to finally just surrendering more and allowing things to be easy, not in the sense of like, is it hard or easy, but is it in alignment with your soul? Is it alignment with who you really are? Is it really coming from your pure consciousness and not just something fabricated from your mind, right? So that is Travel Tuesday Masterclass. And yeah, I'll see you tomorrow.